This is an article that came out in Blavity, and I will leave the link to this article in the description box. How race and class changed the perception of America's drug addiction. The media has finally been paying attention to the ongoing opioid and heroin abuse plague that seems to be a silent matter until demographics change everything. It seems that those who were initially affected by drug addiction had no social or racial resemblance to the politicians and health experts who could help the situation. It went undetected by regulators and law enforcement officials until evidence of the carnage it was causing began piling up to their feet, stated the Working Class Perspective blog. There are now widespread reports of a lot of coverage on opioid and heroin crisis. The president has even put a task force to combat the plague, and many addicts are being treated under the scope that opioid addiction is a disease. Yeah, crack addiction is not a disease. Back in the 90s, that wasn't a disease. You deserve to go to jail, but nobody deserves to go to jail. And let's pat them on the head and say it's a disease. It's a disease. Devils, man. Hospitalization seems to be the choice of treatment, even though incarceration was the only option that minorities had when they are impacted by drug addiction. That's right, because black drug addicts still go to jail, even to this day. But they claim everything is a public health issue. Now, what they mean is only for them. One of the most widely discussed reports came from economists Ann Case and Angus Deaton on working class, who identified that rising death rates among middle-aged whites, especially those from the working class, were tied in part to overdoses. These type of reports changed everything. What does all this mean? Well, these demographics and deaths of people who were not minorities seem to create a sense of urgency in America, and they're still dropping like flies. St. Louis based and acclaimed director Anthony Monahan was ahead of the media trend reporting on opioid and drug addiction. The documented he documented the plight of working class Americans suffering from addiction for the past 3 years. Monahan captured what he believes was America's apathy towards the working class and those who feel as if they have been left behind in this film, Rednecks in Clutches. Woo! I guess we'll watch the video.
Hi, my name is Tony Monaghan. I'm a culture. Come from a really poor family, come from one of 11 kids. Never really got much education. I own a business here now called Irish Construction in St. Louis, Missouri.
The Irish way, they tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly to your face, whether you want to hear it or not.
I found a different breed of people here in construction than I have worked with before on my adventures.
It's because we're being open and honest.
Yeah, I mean,
putting all the chips on the table,
throw
right?
everything on the table.
But is it wise to always put all your chips on the table?
Heaven won't take me notice, but I'll take over, because you know what? I'm gonna kick some motherfucking ass before I die.
The guys he's got, you know, it's been quite funny, and it's been a real eye opener for me.
I thought it was cops that was after him. Oh, he said it's aliens. He said they came back to get me.
Like I'm the Jesus of masonry, you know what I mean? kind of gives you the psychopath glare.
I killed him. I killed a man.
I haven't seen guys like the guys I've seen here. Honestly, haven't they?
Tom, when I woke up, came on my death. He's like, you need to stop smoking crack.
Yeah. And did you believe him?
No.
They're all addicted to something: drugs, heroin, meth, crack.
16 years old, I was shooting cocaine.
I don't know how my dad does it. He makes it work.
They seem to have a lot of good things about them. Like a lot of them have got compassion once you get to know them, and they really want to be your friend.
Yet in all those big cities, no place have I seen like the road by the river that flows through Rahim.
Rednecks and culchies, huh? Okay. Whatever. All right. So it just sounds like to me it's just a bunch of Irish that are talking about their drug addiction in a documentary. So let's move on. Let's be honest, the opioid and heroin plague is no different than the crack epidemic. Actually, it is. It's a lot bigger. What's different is that white people are affected. Very true. And that's the only reason why it's getting treated as a public health issue. You can rest assured if this same exact thing was happening to the black population, it would be mass incarceration all over again. The new face of drug addiction is not a black and a Hispanic issue. This approach is different. And I can say this as a white man. This is a white man from Ireland that lives in the U.S. My perspective is, an immigrant is different than the average American who may be blinded by privilege and the way they have been conditioned to think. Now, when we say they have privileges, they think we're just whining. I have bad news for you, white America. Everybody on the planet knows you have privileges. I don't believe there's anybody alive on earth at this time that don't know you have privileges. But every time black people bring it up, they're trying to come at us as if there's no history of this in the past. There's centuries and centuries of history on your white privilege, all the way up to present day, where we see all of you getting off in court when you really should be in jail. We see this. And see, this just go to show you the immigrants see it too. But if black people say something about white privilege, what do you mean white privilege? There is no white privilege. Shut up. Shut the hell up. There is tons and tons of history going back all the way to the 16, 17, 18, 19, 2000 and all the way up to this damn decade. Okay, you're not fooling nobody with your dumb arguments. I guess that's your high IQ at work. Okay, let's move on. When I first did my documentary, no media even wanted to accept this depiction of working class chaos and drug addiction. Somehow, I think there is narrative that is pushed in which non-minorities must always be perceived in the best light, leading to very untrue stereotypes and making working class and poor minorities invisible in the American landscape. This is so true. This is so true. And we see this every day in the media. When it's black people, they want to plaster the negative coverage every day in news cycles over and over again. When white people do things wrong, they go silent. I have yet to see mainstream media make a big deal out of this drug plague. They don't even want to talk about white men in this country that are your biggest cop killers. They won't even talk about that. And we damn know it's been, this drug plague has been going on for damn near 20 years. And mainstream media is still not trying to pick it up because they're trying to save the image of white people in this country. Your image is so badly damaged, it can't be salvaged. Okay, it just can't. Everything, and if you think it can, that's because you're fake. No, you got to be fake for centuries. But the image out there about you is so not you, it ain't even funny. And this is why many of them are walking around with this perceived notion that they're better than the black population. But when you start reading what's really going on within their communities, 84% of white people kill other white people. 68% of rapists are white males. Most cop killers in this country are white males. You don't look so rosy anymore. You never have. I mean, you're the people, you're the mothers and fathers of racism and slavery. And you can't even wash that stain off of yourselves. Okay? You have never successfully got that off of you. All you can do is walk around whining, oh, slavery's a long time ago. No, slavery's your prisons. And you never lived without slavery in America, not even to this day. You haven't proven not one decade or century in this country that you could live without slavery. Not once. How can opioid addiction be treated with so much sympathy and seen as a serious medical addiction when the same consideration was absent for African Americans during the crack epidemic that led to a lot of deaths and incarceration? As an Irish immigrant, this taught me about America's racial and class divide. It's almost shocking, said Monahan. Rednecks and Culchies, film that takes an intimate look into the stories of construction workers in St. Louis, Missouri, who worked for Monahan. Monahan highlights the ups and downs of the workers struggling to make it day by day while dealing with issues such as opioid addiction, alcohol, and political and social systems that they feel and apathetic towards their condition. Due to his own poor upbringing in Belmullet County, Mayo, Ireland, Monahan was able to relate to the plight of his workers. He is a self-proclaimed culchie. Culchie is a slang definition of an uneducated, low-class person in Ireland, and the Irish equivalent of a redneck without the stereotypes of racism associated with them. Monahan and his family experienced such extreme financial hardships that he had to quit school in order to work after only 5 years of formal education. I'm just laughing because when I used to go down in the South, I used to come across a lot of black people that, these were elders. They were elders mainly, that didn't have education. And it was the same way. Their parents were sharecroppers and they were forced to drop out of school and work the fields. And you see, this man went through something very similar, But here's my thing with Monahan. Although he may have struggled in Ireland, I'm not doubting that he did. In America, he still has more advantages as an immigrant, a white immigrant at that, than your average black person. So, I mean, I understand his plight, but I don't feel too bad for him. He's still got advantages that you and I don't have, and we've been here our whole lives. And just the simple fact that he's a white male and a European male on top of that in America. After growing up in Europe, he migrated to the United States and lived in New York and later St. Louis. It was in America that he saw similar struggles, but much more profound than in Europe. Monahan rose out of his own circumstances by starting a successful construction business in Missouri. See, that's what I'm saying. He's still a white male. Okay, right now, if a black man wanted to rise out of his poverty and start a construction business, there is no bank that's going to give him a loan. Okay, but this white European man, he can get a loan. He can get a loan a lot easier than those of us that have been here our whole life. So, no, I don't have that much sympathy for him. It is though his company that he got to know the stories of construction workers and the struggle working class. When I started hiring employees, I didn't understand how so many people could have such drastic drug issues. But the more I explored the segregation in class, the more I understood. Rednecks plus and coochies, culchies, coochies. I like that better. Is their story. I hope that though this film, people will recognize that there is a reason that people get hooked on drugs and there is a solution. Classism is one of America's greatest struggles, as is racism. But despite our economic differences, ethnicities, and culture, we must realize we are much more alike than we are different. No, we're not. We're not alike. I'm sorry. I disagree with that. You know, I know a lot of people still walk around with that. We're all the same. No, we don't. No, we don't. As black people, we have no history of living a life like white people in this country. We are not the same. We have not lynched anybody. We did not form a group similar to the KKK and start putting white people in trees. We didn't do that. No, we are not alike. I hope that this documentary also helps people that care that they get the care that they need, Monahan said. Well, like I said, Monahan is still a white male, even though he's an immigrant from Europe. So just that alone in America, that is seen as something of a big deal in the land of white supremacy. So this man's plight could never be similar to the plight of black people at all. But the one thing I do like is how he, as an immigrant, is shedding light on probably the biggest plague ever seen in American history that American born people are trying their best to stay silent about. So I will give him credit for that. Tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comments and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, please do. And also, please donate to my Hurricane Irma fund for the people in Florida. Peace, family.